So hi everybody and welcome to episode 113 today of Level Up, 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions really do drive the show. Ella is online. She's heading up our social team today and she's in the chat. So please do introduce yourself. Let her know your name, of course, and the city from where you are joining. She will post a link into the chat to vote up the questions that you would most like answered. And of course, for you to add your own. Now, if your question is selected, of course, your name will appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get your questions in early for the panel and stay with us to see that happen. Please, if you can, take a moment to comment, of course, and share the post on LinkedIn and on YouTube. That would be really great. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really does help more people around the world discover our content from APMG International. We really appreciate that. Today, we're going to be talking about building your career within a project management office, and in particular, the journey that will take you up to becoming a PMO specialist. As organizations embrace digital transformation, the harvesting, curation, measurement, and of course, the dissemination of project information, comms, and lessons learned all manifest themselves as a critical business function in the modern enterprise. To discuss this topic, we've got a fantastic panel joining us today. So let's jump straight in and meet them all. Rachel Jenkins is a consultant with Provek, whose work has focused on transformation programs in both healthcare and in education. She's an experienced leadership coach and mentor, and a regular speaker at conferences and events, championing how the PMO can really enable the development of program management capability in organizations. Welcome to Level Up, Rachel.
Hi, Nick. And good morning, everyone. Great to be back again with the opportunity to share my passion for all things PMO. Some great questions coming up. Can't wait to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There really are. It's quite fascinating this morning. We seem to have struck a chord with everybody, so that's great. Dianne Rampadarath is, of course, the Assistant Director of Public Service of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, where she has focused on the delivery of sustainable development programs to rural communities, notably in electrification, including both traditional and also solar capability. So welcome back to Level Up, Dianne. Lovely to have you today.
Thank you very much, Nick, and APMG International for the opportunity to appear on the panel. I'm looking forward to a very interesting show with interesting questions and also learning from my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I'm also delighted to welcome back Eileen Roden. Today, she is, of course, co-founder of the House of PMO and co-author of the PMO Competency Framework. Eileen has a lifetime of proactive contribution to professional communities, including the EM, the Institute of Directors here in the UK, and of course the PMI, amongst many others. Welcome back to Level Up, Eileen. Lovely to see you.
Good morning, Nick. Great to start. What better way to start the week than a conversation about PMOs and people who work in PMOs? Excellent. Look forward to being here.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much indeed. Lindsay Scott works alongside Eileen as the co-founder of the House of PMO, and together they're creating, I think it's fair to say, a home for professional development for everybody who's involved in PMOs around the world. An energetic and eloquent practitioner, Lindsay creates high-quality learning and coaching content that really does engage people in their professional development journey. Welcome back to Level Up, Lindsay. Lovely to see you.
This is actually my first time, so I'm delighted to be here, and I'm loving the idea of having a panel session about PMO at the beginning of the week, like Eileen said. I mean, what else could be more wonderful than that? But yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, okay. You're most welcome. You're most welcome. I hope that it proves to be a fun and valuable event for you. Okay, very good. Mike Brennek describes himself as a learner and experimenter whose role as a trainer with OMEC allows him to really connect with his clients and make a real difference. Focusing on ensuring the very best value, Michael takes time to thoroughly understand each of their unique business cultures and situations in his consultancy work. Welcome to Level Up, Michael. Really nice to see you again.
Hello, thanks for having me. This is a brilliant panel, and I know that the questions are very, very interesting, so I cannot hold you back, and let's dive into it.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you so much, Michael. Our question master for today is Charlotte Miller, who is joining us from the Thames Valley here in the UK. Charlotte, how are you today?
I'm really well. It's quite dark at this time of day, I've noticed. But otherwise, it's cold and it's great. Thank you, Nick. Looking forward to today's show.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So the UK is now in its kind of, shortest days in terms of amount of daylight that we have. So yes, the days start a little dark and finish. Well, the sunlight finishes a little early for my liking, but there we are. So very good. So let's crack on then, if we can. I can see that we've got a huge number of people online already. So welcome, everybody. Don't be shy. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And Charlotte, let's jump straight in and we'll take our first question, if we may.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from one of our panelists, Lindsay. It's a great question to open the show. What is a PMO specialist?
All right. Well, Lindsay, I'm going to come to you a little later, if I may, panel. So who would like to kind of start us off? Dianne, get the conversation underway, if you can, please.
Thank you, Nick. So a PMO specialist is someone who supports PMO, all the project management stakeholders, as well as the project teams, to ensure that project efficiency is implemented and achieved successfully.
Okay, thank you very much. A great start for us. Eileen, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Rachel.
So it's an interesting word, specialist. So when we talk about a PMO specialist, we talk about somebody who typically works in a PMO, so it doesn't necessarily is accountable for delivery of the project, but can provide the environment. So that's the support, as Dianne has just mentioned, but also can provide expertise and coaching to project, program and portfolio managers to ensure they get delivered effectively. And I think then within the PMO itself, you can have a particular specialism, so you can be a planning specialist or a risk specialist. So there's PMO specialist, and then there's a specialist within the PMO as well.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Rachel, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Mike.
Yeah, I would echo what Dianne and Eileen have both said. I think for me as well, it's championing the PMO, and I think flying the flag for the PMO and what we're actually able to do to support organisations in the business and to support the project and programme managers and now portfolio managers to deliver successfully. That is what we're there for.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed. And we've got such a lovely blend today of practitioners as well as, folks that kind of coach and teach. So it's a really nice mix to have on the show. Thank you very much. Mike, your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Lindsay.
I would say that PMO specialist is a keen observer of what is going on in the organization, because you will both deal with the universum of projects and the universum of programs, and those sometimes they do blend together and sometimes not. And if there are any hiccups, this is your role that has to spot them and help everyone. So we echo most of the time that it is a supporting role.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Really, really good point to keep that curiosity going. And Lindsay, how have we been doing so far in trying to round out what this role is really all about?
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question is exactly Eileen picked up on it, is that there is such a thing as a PMO specialist, which is a specialist within a PMO. So I wanted to make it clear, I suppose, that one of the things that you see quite a lot around PMOs is that there are different roles within it, and generally, by and large, they go like kind of 4 levels. So you have administrator, analyst, manager, and director. So when we're talking today about how to become a PMO specialist, it's just getting clear about, what kind of role are we talking about and what is available within the PMO, because there's quite a lot and it's varied, and that's what makes it such a super place to work. Thank you, panel. You did very well.
Okay, right. Thank you very much indeed. That's really good to know that we've got off to a very strong start. And I would say that's absolutely true. You know, the PMO sits at the heart of what is innovation in organizations. It sits at the driving interface, if you like, of change in organizations. It's at the heart of delivering value to organizations. So there's a fantastic dynamic environment in which you can find, real value in your career. So really do consider it. It's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, panel, getting us off to a great start. We've got an eclectic mix of people on social, so we'll go to them in a few moments. But in the meantime, Charlotte, let's move on. We'll take our next question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from Falco. Falco asks, are there important qualifications for this kind of work?
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Falco Werner. He's actually another panelist on Level Up, regular contributor to the community. Eileen, why don't you start us off and then we'll hear from Dianne.
Okay. I think it's really interesting because in a PMO, you could really do with all of the project management training courses. So whether that be Prince 2, managing successful programs, portfolio management, better business cases, all of the plethora of qualifications out there, mustn't forget practice, all of those qualifications out there in order to kind of help you do your job, because that's all around project program and portfolio management. But there are a couple of specialist qualifications out there for PMO individuals. Firstly is the P3O qualification, which tells you how the project and program officers are set up correctly. But I think the new ones that have come out from House of PMO over the last 12 months aimed specifically at individuals who want to work in the PMO. So they are, as Lindsay mentioned, the 4 different levels of role. There is an essentials qualification that kind of gets you ready to do each of those roles, which, as I say, have been out for the 12 months. So they're the ones that are kind of specifically aimed at people who work in and around a PMO.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Dianne and then Lindsay.
So in addition to the qualifications, there are also some core techniques that a PMO specialist can achieve, which include data management, risk management, planning and project implementation, as well as the various project methodologies, which can augment and assist you in the implementation of your duties.
It's quite important, isn't it, this? Because when you are at the center of things, you're going to need to call on a whole variety of different competencies, if you like, in order to be able to execute brilliantly. So thank you very much, Dianne. Lindsay, your thoughts, please, and then Mike.
Yeah, I think when you first started out around PMO, there's obviously different areas. But you need to understand which is the context in which you're working. So yes, sure, you're working within PMO, and therefore, you need to understand the ins and outs of what's required around, what a PMO is doing and what kind of services it's offering. But again, I think, generally what you tend to find with people coming into the field is that they interestingly, the most popular type of PMO that exists is actually a program level PMO, which is, it gives you some clue as to, okay, so if it's the context around program, not only do you have to understand kind of fundamentals of project management and, what it's like, working within a project, but then you've also got that program level, which brings into play some other kind of competencies over and above what you would expect to see in project. So, the context is really important. And then if you're looking for learning, those are probably the 2 main domains. The projects and program is probably where you would start if you're thinking about, how do I become, a person that can able to work in a PMO.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. Final thoughts on this one?
Well, I would add to that if you are a curious learner and you can observe processes, those are the best qualities you can have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's a little like the Harry Potter movies. Instead of the sorting hat, you need the cap of curiosity, all right, to be able to be at the heart of things and add value all of the time, make a real difference. The other thing that I would consider as well is don't kind of overlook those communication skills, developing your facilitation, developing your negotiation, and so on. All of these things are pretty important for you to be able to execute flawlessly and be able to manage with the pace and be resilient as well. So let's jump over to social then. Agnes, thank you very much indeed for joining us once again from Poland. Fantastic to see you online today. And Ifagali as well, fantastic, joining us from Manchester. I'm assuming that that's in the UK rather than over in the US. Tumi, lovely to see you and have you online all the way from South Africa. We're actually using a studio in South Africa today to connect all the panel together from wherever they are in the world. Melbourne, Australia, Hina, brilliant to have you as part of the audience today. And thank you already for your contributions that are online. And Wandimo as well, Ethiopia, represented again. This is the third week, I think, in a row that we've had colleagues joining us from Ethiopia. Fantastic to have you as part of the community. Finally, on this section, Jazz, really great. Malaysia, one of my favorite countries. And I always, whenever I leave Malaysia, I always leave a little heavier than when I've arrived because there's far too much really nice food to eat over there. All right, very good. Let's move on then, if we can. Don't forget, you can put your questions to the panel at any time. Just type them into the chat and Ella and the social team will pick them up. Charlotte, next question, please.
Thank you, Nick. We've got a live question from one of those panelists viewers that you've just mentioned. Wanted Daimu, what are the challenges that many PMO specialists face in the dynamic IT environment?
All right. Well, things do move at pace, don't they, Wandimo? It's absolutely true. So how does that translate? How does that pace of change translate into real challenge then for the PMO specialists or the people who are working in PMOs in organizations? Michael, why don't you start us off this time? Then we'll hear from Eileen.
Well, but being in IT myself, I must say that I have seen that too many times that many PMO specialists lack enough resources, or there are things that should be measured, but these are not being measured, or there is not enough time in very busy projects to implement the tweaks or the little changes that the PMO specialist will find that would be best to optimize the project. So those are the three key things that I would observe in many, many cases.
Mike makes a really, really good point here. Are we busy being busy, or are we actually affording colleagues an opportunity to add the proper value, back into the organization? It's a really, really good point. And we sometimes get what we deserve, don't we, if we don't staff things up properly. Eileen, your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Lindsay.
Okay, I think we've seen, and one of the things that I love about being in this area is that things continue to develop and change. So part of the role of the PMO is to make sure that we're on top of what's happening in the wider industry. So new tools that are coming out, new methods that are coming out. And so within the PMO, we're kind of torn between actually supporting all of the projects and programs, reporting on how they're doing, training people out in those new tools and methodologies at the same time, trying to learn all of the new ones, and it's getting that right balance so we don't bring lots of new things into the delivery teams that are going to kind of confuse, and we really kind of limit that to things that really drive successful delivery of the projects and programs for the organization.
It's such an important aspect of that, isn't it? To spend that time, and have that time to research and bring in those productivity improvements, but also not just from a productivity point of view, but also about, how you actually deliver better value, in less time, if you like. Lindsay, your thoughts, then we'll hear from Rachel.
I think it's as Eileen picked up on the tools, methods, things like that. I think over the last few years especially, and very much related to that word dynamic and also IT, is the rise of things like Agile, Scrum, now product management, and how PMOs are kind of having to switch and adapt and flex the way that they offer their services from being the more traditional waterfall approaches to, to take on board the fact that their organizations are changing the way they deliver or, becoming more specialized in the way that they're delivering certain types of IT, i.e. software development. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster in terms of, for PMOs to try and find and strike that balance between being able to allow, that kind of agility, but also, the PMO is there a lot of the time in order to be able to, to give some kind of level of control, because that's, ultimately organization wants to make sure that its projects are being delivered, according to a time costs and all that kind of good stuff. And Agile's kind of thrown a spanner in the works a little. And, the PMO had to solve that problem. How are we going to be able to carry on, supporting traditional projects, but also now take on board things like Scrum, DevOps, all of those other things that we know are changing the way that organizations deliver certain types of change around IT.
Thank you very much indeed. Rachel and then Mike.
So for me, there's something there in that dynamic IT environment about the amount of data that we now are able to collect and process and report on. Working with one of our clients at the moment about they're looking to start using Power BI, and I think there's something there in the PMO very much about guidance about what are the relevant indicators, what are the most important things to be reporting on. Just because everything can be collected doesn't mean that you have to, because you have to think about its use and value in terms of reporting on what's happening in projects and programs. And it has to be useful to the project managers and everybody else as well. So, a colleague of ours, you'll probably recognise the quote, Eileen and Lindsay, he's very fond of saying, for every metric in, one metric should go out. And I think, that's quite a good rule of thumb.
Okay, it's a really good point, isn't it? We are able now to take the heartbeat of so many different aspects, that it's kind of tricky, really. So we'll come back to that, I think, in a moment. So thank you very much, Rachel, for raising that, because it's a super important point. Mike, your final thoughts on this?
Well, I couldn't voice it in any better way. So I love that there is a metric that if you add a metric, then another metric should go out. It's a brilliant thing because it is very easy to get overwhelmed if you try to measure every single pulse of the project or program environment, for that matter.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's so critical. I mean, one of the things about these kind of workflow environments where you can automate and you can build, almost robotic processes into sampling and pushing and pulling data through different APIs, is that you can kind of get this sort of dashboard syndrome, really, if you're not very careful, can't you, of all of these lovely dials and indicators and visualizations. But meanwhile, you've still created the swing with, only one supporting rope or something. I'm just using that as a very old-fashioned, kind of analogy to link the present to the past. But very good. Thank you very much indeed. Panel, excellent job. Let's move on, Charlotte, if we can, please, and we'll take our next question.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a lot of live questions to get through today. One of them is next. It's from Carolina. How do you become a PMO? Learn or work?
Okay. Well, I can kind of already think what the answer is going to be. Mike, start us off and then we'll hear from Lindsay.
Work. There is a time in your project management career when you will observe certain things being repetitively done, either to a good of a project or to a harm of a project. And this is the level at which you would start thinking about broadening your career and adopting the PMO toolkit and then becoming a PMO specialist. And then it is useful to do your certifications and learn all the ins and outs of PMO.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Lindsay, your thoughts, then Eileen.
And this is a really common question, certainly for people that are looking from the outside in and thinking, I'd really love to be able to work in PMO. It's a bit like that thing, is it chicken or egg? So how do I get a job in PMO if I don't have any experience in it? And I've coached loads of people over the years and worked in recruitment around PMOs for many, many years. And what we say is that you need some experience of working in that kind of office environment. There's no better way to say it, because what you're looking for is what the transferable skills are that you have. So it's about being able to understand, well, what does it mean to work in a PMO role? So, you need to be doing your research around, well, a PMO administrator, does X, Y, and Z, or it's an analyst type role and this is what they do. And then what you're actually trying to do is understand what kind of skill levels you already have and kind of knowledge and experience, and what is transferable over into a kind of PMO work. And what you generally find, people that are coming in from the bottom, so that first rung on the ladder, generally out of university, or they're moving across from a first job or something like that. That's how you generally tend to do it. You have to be able to offer the organisation something in terms of work and experience, and then generally you look at that. What is a PMO administrator? What is it that they tend to do? And you look at the kind of things that probably number one thing that most PMO people is around reporting. So actually, if you have some experience around reporting, it doesn't matter what your role might have been, it doesn't matter if you've come in straight out of university, if you're able to demonstrate that you have some of those core skills, the office-based skills, that there's, the ability to talk to people, to gain information from others, to be able to use tools like, Excel and all that kind of stuff. You're on the starting path, certainly for people at that entry level.
Thank you very much indeed. Comprehensive answer there. Eileen, your thoughts, and then Dianne.
I think it very much depends at what level you're actually going to come into the PMO at. So Lindsay's talked of very much coming at kind of at the junior level, but we find that individuals can come in at the PMO analyst, the PMO manager, and even the PMO director level. So if you're coming in it from a PMO analyst perspective, as Mike said, having good project management experience allows you to support other people who are delivering projects. You've got some real project management experience that you can kind of you can build on. You've seen what works and what doesn't. But coming in at a manager level and a director level, it's really interesting, because we're finding people who've come from business as usual, who've perhaps been involved in a large business change exercise, or have been a program or project sponsor, recognize the importance of how projects and programs help the organization, so can come in and manage the department, and then use the specialists who work for them to do all of the relevant services. So they're there in terms of a relationship with the business. So I think work helps at whatever level, but it will drive what level you come into the PMO, and where you can start adding value.
Excellent. Thank you. Dianne, final thoughts on this?
So as Lindsay said, you need to have certain skills. So to augment your experience, some of the skills that you can have to become a PMO can be good team management skills, communication skills, because you need to be working with your customers and your project teams, as well as your risk management skills, so that you can adequately assess what your risks are and how you can address them.
And thank you very much indeed. And thank you, panel. It's a really good blend there of, the coaching, the working by doing, the learning by doing, and also the, taking those formal qualifications to be able to demonstrate and convert your aptitude to do something, into some evidence that you really can do it. One thought that I have for you is to also consider volunteering, because volunteering is often a way within your current employer that you can actually start to transition and move roles within an organization. So do look out for those opportunities and talk with, your line manager. And if you're not able to get that kind of opportunity within your current organization, consider volunteering outside of your work time with any of the organizations who would benefit from having your energy, your skills, and your commitment in the charity sector. So very good. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I'm guessing, Charlotte, that we've got quite a lot of questions on a similar theme, because a lot of folks who are online today are early to mid-career. So let's take our next question if we can.
Yeah, we've sort of covered this, Nick, already, but it's a live question that's come in. For someone who does not have any experience, what are the qualifications necessary to gain entry-level jobs as a PMO specialist? What is the route?
All right, very good. Lindsay, can you give us a Kickstarter on this one, please?
Yes, sure. So House of PMO has a qualification called Essentials for PMO Administrators. It is very, very much about exactly that question. If you are wanting to get into PMO and you don't have any experience whatsoever, that is the place where you should start. There's a reason why Eileen and I created that qualification is because there's people, for many years, the only option that they had was to do something like Prince 2. Which is why it became so popular. It's is there a way to gain some project management, training? And actually, what it doesn't do, any other you can do project management training for sure, but what it doesn't do is help you to understand what is required of you when you're working within a PMO. You can take project management training, but you're not going to be a project manager. You're going to be working in a PMO. It's a different role. And therefore, qualification that we have, that first level one, is absolutely for people that are starting out in PMO.
And and thank you very much. And I'm really delighted that we've been able to bring that to light because, sometimes I think in the past what happened was that when there wasn't anything that was specific, so people were sent on a variety of related courses, which were great because it gave them, some background and some, understanding and some methodologies and so on, which are really all super building blocks. But until the essentials course came along, there was nothing, I don't think at any rate, that was really targeted, really, really specific to get you on that journey. So great question and a fantastic answer. You really nailed it. Over on social, Isaac, great that you're joining us today from the wonderful city of Birmingham. Right in the centre of the UK, and also Adesui, who is joining us from West Africa, from Lagos in Nigeria. Really great to have you online. It really is a global community today. And Nigeria, of course, one of the countries that's really the powerhouse of IT innovation, particularly app development in Africa. So thank you for joining us from there. And of course, our team in Cape Town. Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen and Nigel, who are joining us from Cape Town. And Suchita is online, of course, over in our Indian office as well. All right, very good. Let's move on. And we'll take our next question, please, Charlotte.
Thanks, Nick. We have a live question from Winnebago. What are the major roles of a PMO specialist? Specific to industry, is there any difference in a PMO specialist in telecom, banking, construction?
This is a really interesting question, isn't it? Because sometimes industry verticals bring governance and they bring, requirements from regulatory authorities, which do alter the flavour of the work that we all undertake. Eileen, in your experience, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, some of the research that we've done said every single PMO, regardless of where it sits in the organisation, always does reporting on projects and programs. So that kind of goes across the piece. There isn't a PMO that doesn't do reporting. However, once you get kind of past that, what we find is the focus of different PMOs changes very much in terms of the organisation, what's important to them, where they particular systems and processes lead them to. But when it comes to industry, the one thing that really kind of differentiates out is large construction industries and engineering projects, where we tend to have a very specialist PMO called project controls, where we spend an awful lot of time looking at having a resourced plan and being able to pull off the statistics against progress and cost to demonstrate how far we're through and doing our estimates to complete. So the controls department is a really kind of key focus of those large kind of physical industries.
All right. Okay. Now, Dianne, I'd like to ask you, and specifically in working in government, for your thoughts on this. Are there genuine differences, when you're working, say, in the government sector versus working in financial services? What are your thoughts on that?
So the major role of a PMO is to ensure that there is accuracy in terms of your budgeting, your resources, your scheduling. And the basic principle of a PMO is to ensure that procedures, practices, and operations go according to how they should. So to me, in my experience, whatever industry, there are the basic principles that will apply. But again, your process and your practices would be different if you're in the government service or you're in a financial service, because you have public service regulations. In the financial service, you have financial regulations, which you need to adhere to, but your principles may be the same.
Yeah, I think I do really agree with that. Working with a number of government organisations, agencies, and so on, folks across the public sector, sometimes the way that things are measured are a little bit different, and there are a different blend of subjective and objective measures about the success of projects, that are important to be able to gather and analyse and report upon on a regular basis. So thank you very much for that insight. Lindsay, your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, in my mind, there's always been kind of two camps. There's people working around PMOs that are business IT type projects and programs that they're supporting, and the ones that are what I'd call old school project management, where it's construction, it's engineering, it's manufacturing. So there's two very different types of environments, and that's the major difference that I see. Certainly in terms of the kind of skill sets and the types of person that work in those kind of industries. And we see it time and time again, so you might in construction and engineering, there's a big emphasis on controls and planning and costing and risk. Whereas in business and IT and transformation type programs, it's very much it feels more like it's the focus is all on the stakeholder management, the managing the politics. It's very it's less control in that respect. But I'm sure Eileen's got something to add to that one.
All right, okay, we'll hear from her in a moment. Rachel, your thoughts, please, then we'll come back to Eileen.
Yes, I think you need a certain amount of understanding of the industry or sector that your PMO is in, but we do have these sort of standardized functions around reporting, sort of assurance, coaching, guidance, but I do think some knowledge of the context of the PMO is quite important in the role that we have to add intelligence on top of assurance and data, and how we then transform that into supporting project program managers to deliver successful projects. So there's some need, but it's not all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense to me. It's a nuanced rather than an absolute situation. Eileen, final thoughts on this?
Okay, I just wanted to bring the final bit up, almost kind of not sector, but from an IT perspective. Very often within an IT PMO, the development method of kind of software and looking after the IT infrastructure is actually embedded within the project and program delivery method. So very much within an IT, you need an understanding of software development and what's involved in that.
Absolutely. It's such an important thing, and that may well link us into our next kind of question that I'm just seeing coming in from our audience online. So let's jump straight into it if we can. Charlotte, let's move on. We'll take our next question.
Thanks, Nick. Question from Anne Noel. What could be the role of a PMO specialist in Agile?
Well, it's such an important thing, isn't it? How do we dovetail into those projects which are predominantly agile and those projects which are predominantly, delivered through other methodologies? What are the panel's thoughts on this? Is there a definitive difference, or is it the route through how you engage rather than actually what it is that you're doing, which is changing? Eileen, start us off, please.
I think it goes back to level, because as a PMO you can sit at project, program and portfolio level. Certainly one of the challenges we've got at portfolio level is we have to provide back to the organisation an update of how the whole of the portfolio is delivering, which is a combination of waterfall and agile projects, and how that's impacting benefits realisation and strategy. So kind of a key challenge is being able to find a holistic way of demonstrating how all of the projects come together and how progress is developing for their organization. And there's been some real kind of progress in terms of, as we talked about before, some of the metrics we can use depending on what kind of project type or what delivery method we're using, but kind of bringing them together as a whole so it's actually meaningful information to the organization.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Dianne, what are your thoughts about, PMOs in an agile environment?
So Agile in a PMO environment is a more modern approach to project management techniques and project management implementation. So the role of the PMO can be to encourage and promote your teams in adapting to change quickly, as well as giving your project teams a lot more autonomy and capacity in terms of how they can approach issues and address project management concerns to ensure that your project is successfully implemented.
Thank you very much indeed. One thought for all of the Agilists out there, do be kind. do be kind to PMOs. There's a degree of governance which is required and reporting which is required in organizations, which can dovetail really, really well into agile projects and agile environments. And it relies on us all being able to, find that common ground and find that collaboration and really build, a resonant community who are working together. So dogma on either side of the equation, it's not helpful. So really do consider that when you're working together to be able to deliver better outcomes for organizations. It can sometimes be tricky, but it usually boils down to how we work with each other rather than being misaligned in terms of our objectives. All right, very good, excellent. So thank you very much indeed. We've got about 10 minutes to run or so on the questions. I can see quite a lot of questions which are stacking up. So Charlotte, let's move on. We'll take our next one, please.
Thanks, Nick. Question from Kate. Are there any communities, free or otherwise, you recommend connected with to learn more about PMOs?
Okay, well, Rachel, you're at the heart of a lot of this work, trying to connect people together and bring them together so that they can learn and explore together. Your advice, please, for Kate.
So I have to give a shout out to House of PMO. Obviously, Lindsay and Eileen, instrumental in creating that professional sort of forum network for us to come together and share all our learning with each other. Can't rate it highly enough. There's several levels of membership. I'm sure Eileen and Lindsay will talk about it a little bit more at the end of the question. But even if you can't afford to pay a membership, you can get so much from the free resources. There are a number of webinars and things that you can still watch and still join in. So whichever, and it's international as well, House of PMO. So you don't have to just think, it's only relevant if you're in the UK. Lots of other forums, special interest groups in the APM and so on. But for me, it's House of PMO.
I think it's really good to have, that energy and that excitement and that commitment, in the kind of the core community, if you like. And that has been the hallmark, I think, of the House of PMO right from the very beginning. Lindsay, what would you, let me turn the question around a little bit. What do you really look for from individual members when they join the House of PMO community? What are you really looking for from them, would you say?
Yeah, all we want is people that are, are passionate about PMO and, are open to learning and, but not only about learning for themselves, but it's the interactions with each other. We've been doing it for a number of years. I think it's probably coming up to about 8 years now. And I think that if you look at some of the people that have been with us pretty much from the early days and just seeing how much those people have grown and changed, certainly around things like, not just for knowledge around PMO, but it's like you said before, it's how you choose to work and your interactions with others. We're seeing people's confidence grow massively, from not just from learning stuff, but actually learning how to network and to interact with each other and that kind of thing. And I think that's all we want is people that are, they're open-minded about also sharing their insights. House of PMO is not just about delivering lectures that people can just sit and listen to. We do rely a lot on interaction. And the reason why that has been the case, and always will be the case, is that PMO is still little understood compared to project management. So actually, to get a lot of learning, it is from the people that are doing the job, rather than textbooks or anything out there that's on the internet.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Eileen, final thoughts on this?
Just a couple of things. Lindsay talked about interaction, and we've mentioned already kind of curiosity about just wanting to find out and ask questions. And we often say, it's not about having all of the answers to those questions. It's the willingness to ask the questions that generates the conversation and the learning. So we try to provide a whole range of different kind of mechanisms across lots of different subject areas that allow people to kind of ask those questions in a safe environment. And I think when we start talking about a community, it is about having that kind of safe environment where people don't say, well, that was a stupid question, wasn't it? So everybody kind of recognizes that we're all at very different levels in our knowing. And one of the things we always say is when you come to an event, you're going to find somebody and say, oh, I wish I had a PMO like Rachel's. But Rachel's going to be looking at Dianne's and saying, oh, I wish I had a PMO like Dianne's. But Dianne's going to be looking at kind of Rachel's and saying, well, she's got some bits in her PMO we've worked really hard on. So I think it's that kind of share and recognizing we can all learn from everybody.
Most definitely is. And that sense of, shared purpose, it really, really does help, being able to have some people to bounce ideas off and share, ideas, and also in a proper professional and, anonymized fashion to share some of the very real challenges, that we're facing in our day-to-day work is incredibly supportive, because it's often the case, Eileen, I'll come back to you in a moment. It's often the case, I think, as, having worked as a consultant and worked very closely with project management offices in my career, that it's very much a giving role, from the PMO. You hear a lot. It's like being a kind of a GP almost and having lots of patients. So you hear an awful lot of stuff. So you actually need to be able to go out there and get some energy again from other people, other professionals, other like-minded people in the House of PMO, and you can draw on their energy and their enthusiasm. Eileen, very final thoughts, and then we'll move on.
And much as I know we're happy to kind of promote the House of PMO, there are other kind of PMO groups out there. So, they're that also kind of, so the PMO Global Alliance, the PMO Leaders, there's some a podcast that's done by Impact PMO from the States every week. So there are lots of things out there now. So whether your preference is for face-to-face meetings, webinars, podcasts, there is a growing number of kind of really helpful groups out there for you to join.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, of course. All right, thank you very much. So we'll have a little look online, see if we can find one of the links for that podcast to be able to share it in the chat. Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Charlotte, I think we've got time possibly for one or two final questions, depending on what they are. So let's crack on.
Thanks, Nick. Question from Mark. When should an organisation look at establishing a project management office?
All right. So when should this actually happen? Is this something that should be part of the Articles of Association when you stand up an organisation for the very first time? Or is there a point of maturity that's reached when an organisation should really establish these things? Eileen, we'll take your thoughts first and then Dianne.
Okay, so I think when an organisation gets to the point where they recognise that they're doing multiple projects, so typically an organisation with a huge big change programme might create a programme office, but a PMO that looks across all of the projects in the organisation has to be when they recognise they want to get some kind of consistency and efficiencies through doing projects and programmes perhaps in a more consistent way. And certainly maturity of delivery will only come where you've got a PMO in place, and P3M3 research shows that. Interestingly, one of the things Lindsay and I have got a session on in the 3rd of December is looking at almost exactly what you've said, is when organizations are now starting to see PMO as a business function in the same way they say HR and finance, rather than a little office that kind of sits in project land doing a bit of things with project and program managers. So we're hoping actually it will get to the point where as people build an organization, they say, oh, we'll have an HR. Well, of course we'll have a PMO to support us with our project and program delivery.
Yeah, and I think that echoes the fundamental difference now in which organisations set to turn their ideas, their vision, into tangible products and services, and it's all centred around projects. So why wouldn't you have that kind of at the heart of your organisational design? Dianne, your thoughts, and then Mike.
So just to echo what Eileen would have said, when you recognize that maybe some of your processes are not very much consistent, you can consider establishing a PMO.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. That's a good point, isn't it? This is a remedial, it can be at any rate, a way of fixing problems. So a really good thought for you there if you're recognizing those symptoms. And perhaps it's time to act. Michael, final thoughts on this?
I would like to echo what Dianne just said, that there is a time in your organization when you would look at your projects and you would notice that you are repeating the same mistakes or you are achieving the same successes. And this is the way in which, if you start systematically observe your projects, you actually are having a PMO already in a way that you are observing excellency and mitigating pitfalls, and this is the way to go. So sometimes it might be a huge organization. If you are working in a corporation and you have huge projects, then it probably will be an organized, formal PMO. But sometimes if you're working in small organization, just those observations and starting by learning from the previous lessons learned, those that usually remain on your shelf, this will bring you good values to your projects. So start early.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Some excellent kind of answers there from the panel, and quite an interesting debate actually that's been going on live on LinkedIn as well. So I just want to, if I can, as the chat is scrolling past super quickly, I just saw a really good comment. I think it was from Abajali, who kind of said that it's so important to ask the right questions. There we go. So it's so important to ask the right questions, to diagnose closely the situation. All right. So, and that is the key. So thank you so much, my friend, for contributing that. There's a moment in your consulting career when you realize, it's a Damascus moment where it dawns on you that actually you don't need to know the answers. What you really need to know are better questions. And when you ask better questions, then you can truly help and facilitate everybody around you to arrive, at the correct outcome, which is a very different thing. So spot on. And thank you very much indeed. All right. We have to move on, I'm afraid. So we're going to take our final question for today, if we can, Charlotte. Last question.
Thanks, Nick. Question from Louise. What are some of the most important soft skills required to work in a PMO?
Rachel, start us off and then we'll hear from Mike.
Everything that's entailed in stakeholder management, just as project managers and program managers have their stakeholders, you have yours in a PMO. So it's really important to be able to develop those relationships. And as we've just already said, asking those right questions at the right time, learn some coaching skills, learn to listen and learn to connect the observations. You have a unique view of the organisation in which it's all operating, and draw on that and pull those common threads together.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike, and then Dianne.
I would definitely say you have to be a good listener, and if you ask the right questions, then you will be provided many answers, and picking up the right symptoms and rejecting all the bias around it, and will help you to come to the right solutions for that project.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Dianne, briefly, and then Eileen.
Sure. So communication and leaderships can be some of the softer skills that you would need, because you will be communicating with your customers, with your project teams, as well as assisting and managing project teams. So those can be some skills.
Okay, thank you very much. And Eileen, final thoughts?
Empathy and pragmatism. It's really important that we don't just stand there with our policeman's truncheon and say, you absolutely must do it because that's the way we do it here. It's recognizing the challenges that individuals have in the context of their particular project and program, and concentrate on getting to project success rather than just focusing on compliance.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Such an important part of that, isn't it? It's about bringing colleagues with you on that journey to improvement, and that rarely comes from policing. It's generally from engagement. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Some fantastic questions today, and a very lively and energetic discussion actually online as we've been talking as well. So thank you very much. So we're going to move to our closing remarks now, if we can. Dianne, I'm going to come to you first, and then we'll go to Eileen. Your thoughts and reflections on today's show, Dianne.
A lot of very interesting and insightful questions, particularly the live questions. So I really enjoyed today's session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dianne. Thank you for joining us at a very unsociable hour from your location. So we really appreciate it. Eileen and Lindsay, please.
Okay, I think it's great to see such interest in the PMO. There is more and more available now for people who want a career in PMO, who don't necessarily want to be a project and program management. So do look around and get in touch if you need any more help.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Great advice there. Lindsay and then Michał.
Yeah, so I would say, the subject's been about how to become a PMO specialist. One thing I've always used to say to people is, if you're thinking about coming into the PMO, try and understand why. What is it that you really enjoy or like the look of with this career? Because those are the kind of things that will keep you at it. It is difficult to get into a new field when you have very minimal experience and training and things like that. So, really understand what it is that you're trying to pursue, what kind of roles you're trying to look at. Immerse yourself in understanding the PMO world, because, it will be a little tough. But the more people that you speak to, the more interviews you try out, all of that kind of good stuff was going to help you gain more and more confidence. But keep at it. It's a brilliant career. It can go literally anywhere. So hopefully you'll be joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Mike and then Rachel.
Well, if I would recommend one thing that you read is the PMO Competency framework. We have the author here. So this is a book I keep on my desk actually in my daily work. So oh, yes, the very one, yes. So this is my tool, both when coaching juniors to achieve their best results and actually for my own inspiration. So I highly recommend that book.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Michał. We really appreciate that. Rachel, your closing remarks today. Oh, can't hear you, Rachel.
Oops, sorry, I accidentally clicked my mute then while I was moving my mouse around. Apologies. Really enjoyed today. As always, whenever you get a group of PMO enthusiasts together, that energy rises, you learn from each other. I've learned several things myself this morning. And I think, if you're enthusiastic about PMOs, don't give up. Just keep going and you'll get there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Really great advice from everybody. Charlotte, your reflections on today's episode. Fast and furious, I think.
Yes, definitely. Lots of live questions. I think one observation to take away from that is that lots of questions about starting off in PMO and starting a career in PMO. Lots of questions about that. So something that lots of people are interested in. Thank you to our amazing panel, and even bigger thank you to our viewers for all your questions. We can't do it without you. No show without the questions.
Yeah, most definitely. So on that note, we are going to run slightly over. So I want to thank our producers online for your brilliant questions today. Great job. And do watch out for your name in the credits. So let's move on. Over on our website, you can, of course, search for the answers to more than 1,500 questions now that have been asked across the series on Level Up. It's comprehensive. It's all free. So please do join us over there. And don't forget that you can download the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. Now then, later on this week, on the 25th, we tackle how to keep up to date in the field of organizational change management, keeping up with the trends and techniques and the tools available and so on, before going on to explore building a service culture in organizations, which is going to be our last show of the month. Not last show of the year, but last show in November on Monday, the 28th. A little further forward, of course, coming up in December on the 12th and the 16th, we have our Christmas special shows. It's your opportunity to get to know the panelists a little bit more and also get some sneak peeks behind the scenes of Level Up. So be sure to join us for those. Pop those into your calendars straight away. Subscribe to the show, and we'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.